Hello and welcome to another ATP geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pierce. This is a Ukraine War Update extra video giving you the flavour of the war, added tidbits and nuggets to get your teeth into to understand the conflict in Ukraine a little bit better. Well, where should we start? I'm going to do a couple of threads by Trent Telenko here that concerns the Tupolev drone, the kind of rocket drone, the rejigged 1970s rocket that the Ukrainians have used to hit the Engels airbase twice now. And this is Trent Telenko, who's like very interested in logistics and like the very particular elements to do with certain aspects of how things happen in a war, and so on and so forth. So Tendar who's another source I use, had said something to a further OSINT source saying, "I absolutely well, let's go to the original. I don't think Ukraine is hitting airfields deep inside of Russia with the Tu-141. However, I'm not above saying that it is the truth. It's hilarious to think that Russia doesn't detect a 7-ton steel rocket ship from the 1950s sci-fi movie flying for over an hour across their airspace." And Tendar says, "I absolutely share your sentiment. It's hard to believe that the rocket from the Flash Gordon movie would actually make such a fuss in the 21st century." And then I have to look back at what epic failures Russians have proven to be the last 10 months. Then it is not that hard to believe. Trent Telenko adds, "It is less an issue of how an aircraft looks or how fast it flies than simple radar line of sight." So this is great. This is where he goes, right, I'm going to explain how this flying machine can make its way through Russian air defenses for so far. So let's go to Google Earth just to give you a sense of how far this has gone. So if we go to Ukraine, here's our map of Ukraine. Now, I don't know where they're fired from, to be honest, but let's assume, I don't know, it's going to be somewhere around here. And it has flown all the way over Russian airspace in probably a straight line, maybe across there to hit Saratov. Yeah, the Engels Air Base in Saratov. So that could be 500 kilometers of flying, 700 kilometers, whatever. It's impressive that that has gone so far without being shot down. Trent Telenko says, less an issue of how an aircraft looks or how fast it flies than simple radar line of sight. Skin painting military radars have to be 50 kilometers apart to be able to detect or deny low-level airspace to the enemy. And that assumes the ground is flat. And he's talked about this previously, and he links back to that. Most terrain is not very flat. A slow, low flyer with digital maps made from satellite images with satellite radio navigation updates can easily fly between terrain and known military radars. I did a long thread in 2020 about Azeri drones and modern mission planning software, showing how anyone with drones can maneuver at low levels through integrated air defenses. So that's just a short thread there to say it's possible, and you just need to navigate the kind of holes between the radars, and also with terrain. Terrain, unless it's really flat, terrain doesn't really help radar coverage. Anyway, he goes on to talk about it a little bit more in terms of the radar systems of the S-300 and the surface-to-air missile systems that Ukraine need in order to defend its own territory. But before I go on to that thread, one of the points is that you need these radar systems 50 kilometers apart in order to give, decent coverage. But the one theory is, or and there's good evidence that this has happened, is that the Russians have removed a whole load of their radar systems from Russia to put them into the occupied territories of Ukraine to help them fight their battles, and defend their occupied territories and the troops and the installations they have in their territory. So they've taken these radar defense systems and surface-to-air missiles, perhaps as well, take them out of the Russian main kind of country, the Russian oblasts up here. So it could be that actually there is quite an easy flight path for the Ukrainian drones to hit the Engels airfield in Saratov because they've removed a load of radars. And so actually, if Ukraine know where the Russian radars remain, then they can easily evade those radars with a little bit of steering here and there. And then Bob's your uncle. Engels can get hit, and it's only when the drones get when it's too late, when they get near to Saratov and above the airbase, that the Russians claim they hit the drone above the airbase. But of course, that's incredibly unrealistic. That every time they take these drones out, it just so happens to be right above the airbase. Anyway, Trent Telenko goes on to talk about stuff to do with this in terms of surface-to-air missile defense systems in Ukraine. So let's have a look at what he says. This will be an analytical thread on the recapitalizing the Ukrainian Air Force with S-300 surface-to-air missile systems, SAM systems, also known as the Great Hawk Roundup. And this is what's behind this is the idea that S-300, which is the mainstay of the Russian and Ukrainian surface-to-air missile defense coverage, is that they are running out the missiles for the S-300. So they can't make these missiles anymore, it seems. And if they can, it'll only be on very kind of small amounts. I don't know if anyone like Bulgaria is making them, but as far as I understand it, S-300s are of a limited stock and they're running out of them. And actually, that's what they use for most of their air defense system. And that's a big, big problem. So what do you do in order to replace the S-300? So if you can't get the missiles, those missile launchers are redundant, and therefore you need a shed load of other systems to replace them. Western efforts to date have been inadequate, even with the NASAM and the latest Patriot delivery started by the Biden administration to fully recapitalize this PSU SAM force of initially 30 batteries of S-300s. In 2014, those in Crimea were captured by Russia, will require a further 20 plus batteries of NASAMs and IRIS-T with some Patriot backstop for the ATBM role. So the issue is the Western allies do not have that many SAM batteries available in their current inventories, nor the ability to produce more quickly. To date, Poland has provided one or more batteries of the S-125 SA-3 Goa. The Spanish have provided around 2 batteries of ASPID. Germany has provided an IRIS-T battery. The US and Norway have put together a NASAM battery. France is providing a SAMP-T battery. And there are rumors of 1 or 2 MIM-23I Hawk batteries from Nordic countries, plus the announced US Patriot battery. I think Spain have provided Hawk as well. It is unclear to me exactly how many Patriot launchers and radar systems are being sent. Less than a full battalion is a certainty. Italy is thinking about providing Ukraine with a SAM battery, but has actually just sold one to Pakistan. This works out to be about, give or take, 9 SAM batteries. The bottom line up front is Ukraine is running out of the 5V55 missiles for the S-300 SA-10 Grumble batteries and cannot make more. Ukraine desperately needs 20 more SAM batteries to protect its power and other civil infrastructure from further cruise missile strikes by Russia. While NASAM is the perfect answer because of the launcher's ability to draw on 20 years worth of AIM-120 and AMRAAM and AIM-9 Sidewinder air-to-air missile production sitting in NATO Air Force stocks, what that means is that NASAM can fire these rockets that have had 20 years of stocking from NATO countries. So there are shed loads of those rockets. And as the S-300 is running out of rockets that makes that system redundant, the NASAM has a load of rockets it can use and a variety of rockets. But there just aren't that many NASAMs. So the problem is, you need both stocks of the missile launcher and the missiles that they launch. Ukraine needs good enough right now. So they just need enough to get by, not perfect NASAM next year. This is where the humble 1990s MIM-23I Hawk may have to be used as a stopgap capability for defeating low-flying cruise missiles and older Russian tactical jets without jammer pods. Now, I did a section on the Hawk SAM system in a previous video, so let me remind you of it a little bit. So the Hawk system has been around since the 1960s. It's been used in Vietnam. It's obviously been upgraded, and you know, you have little add-ons and whatnot, but it's still a fairly aged piece of kit. But is again, it's good enough, right, for what it needs, for what Ukraine needs. And Ukraine, you know, here it says Spain and France have given, this is 2 months ago, Hawk missile systems to Ukraine. Lots of video footage here, and in fact, there's a claim that Hawk air defense missile system has destroyed 3 Ka-50 battle helicopters already. Again, that's interesting. Uh, and there you go, lots of footage here. Now, I showed you, I think, this video from the Forces News that talked about, you know, these brand new systems, and then also giving them Hawk, and then they found footage. You know, the best footage they could find recently, at least at the time, was literally from Vietnam and whatnot. So this is the Hawk system. Um, but the advantage here is that there appear to be quite a number of these in stock around the world in various countries. So Trent Telenko will go on to say that if the Biden administration can pull some strings, they could actually gather a whole number of these systems and place them around Ukraine. So this could be the stopgap. And there it is. That's the system there. Big old rockets on board. Right, let's go back to Trent Telenko then. The Cold War era MIM-23I Hawk was the closest thing to a NATO standard SAM as could be found. Batteries were established behind the inter-German border, about 50 kilometers apart, for a SAM belt, denying low-level to stratospheric airspace to Warsaw-packed jets. It costs a lot of money. Elected legislators don't want to spend to decommission a Hawk missile. So hundreds, if not thousands, should still be in containers in European NATO nations and US non-NATO allies and client states for transfer to Ukraine. Low-flying cruise missiles don't have human pilots capable of reacting to threats or electronic warfare systems that can jam radars or drop flares and chaff. They are target drones for most missiles whose threat comes from either saturation or evasive routing versus known radar locations. Even an Igla shoulder-fired SAM can take one out of if properly alerted by Ukrainian Uber-like software on computer tablets connected to cell phone networks. So there are various ways of taking cruise missiles out. The problem here is radar line of sight. You need a radar every 50 kilometers to beat the curvature of the Earth, even in very flat plains. The terrain isn't always flat. So this is where he refers back to what he was talking about in the previous thread. The problem is Ukraine is huge, the size of Texas in terms of square hectares. Ukraine needs those 20 Hawk batteries to draw enough of those 50-kilometer diameter circles to cover its power grid and other civilian infrastructures from Russian cruise missile strikes. And I showed you one such map the other day of the radiuses of different missile systems protecting areas of Ukraine. Gathering enough Hawk batteries from around the world, regardless of their configuration, is something only a team of the Biden administration's defense and state departments can do. It can be done in weeks if the Biden administration has the wit and the will to do so. So that's Trent Telenko calling for a shed load of Hawk systems to be procured by the US Biden administration and given to Ukraine. And I would fully agree. You know, they need everything they can get. And if they are running low on S-300 missiles, then these systems need to come sooner rather than later. Okay, let's move on. A lot of Russian trophy equipment is idle due to lack of spare parts. So trophy equipment is equipment that's been captured by the Ukrainians. And I said that, you know, they've got more tanks than the Russians do at the moment, arguably, on the battlefield, given the Russian losses and the Russian abandoned and captured vehicles, which is a zero-sum game. So it means that, you know, as they lose vehicles that are abandoned or captured, obviously Ukraine gains them. So that the difference between the two is kind of like doubled, if you like. So a lot of this equipment, however, requires it's been abandoned because it's broken down or it's damaged and gets captured, they need spare parts, but they just don't have the spare parts. So repairing the equipment is hard work overall, and it does take a lot of time too. But some vehicles cannot be repaired due to lack of spare parts. Constant power outages also make repairs extremely difficult, which is why the Allies, NATO, have set up repair facilities, I think, in both Poland, Lithuania for other people. That Lithuania is specifically for the Panzerhaubitze 2000, the German self-propelled gun, but Poland and Czech Republic, I think, may have repair facilities working on behalf of the Ukrainians. They just need those spare parts. And that's the advantage the Russians have, is they've got these thousands and thousands of mothballed pieces of equipment they can cannibalize, that have already to a large extent been cannibalized, but there will be the spare equipment for the Russians, just not for the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians suffer losses. Don't forget that every time I report on these Russian losses, it's not like Ukraine aren't losing things. Here's another AHS Crab, which is a self-propelled gun, a really good one. It's a Polish piece of equipment that actually the Ukrainians have a load of. They of, say, the Caesar, Panzerhaubitze 2000, the Crabs, the Susanna, all these SPGs. They have actually been given the largest number of pieces of equipment they've been given are the Crabs. So anyway, a couple of them have been lost in the last few days, and that is obviously a big hit for the Ukrainians. Here's something to finish on. It's a shorter one today because I did a longer frontline update, but I thought I would give you some music and some happiness. And here is the Shock Show Orchestra giving you a Ukrainian carol for your delectation. And there you go, played almost entirely on guns with the added xylophone or glockenspiel, not sure. I'm sure someone can let me know. Just things you got to do to keep your morale high, I guess. Good on you. Good stuff. Anyway, thank you. That was a short one. To compensate for my just rambling frontline update this morning, I had a lot of analysis of Bakhmut. If you haven't seen it, go and check that out. Things aren't looking great in Bakhmut, but long-term prognosis might be okay. Just at the moment, a bad day for the Ukrainians yesterday. Anyway, thanks so much for all your support. Thank you for those who have joined, become members of my channel, either of my two channels. Really appreciate that. Thanks for those who have popped along to uasupporter.com/ATP. Don't forget that /ATP. And then you can check out some of the stash that they have there. And my channel gets a tiny bit of commission. Let's have a look at phone cases. If you want to show your support for Ukraine, you can get some phone cases, iPhone cases particularly, and Samsung there as well. Awesome source. Thank you. Take care, and I will speak to you tomorrow.